In our top story tonight, the Zimbabwean pastor who led protests last year against President Robert Mugabe's government has been arrested at Harare airport. The US-based Zimbabwean activist has been charged with subverting the constitutionally elected government. Now, this follows his return to the country after several months abroad. According to his sister, Ivan Harare was escorted into another room by three men even before he went through immigration or customs. Last year, Harare emerged as the leader of the #ThisFlag protest movement that quickly grew into the largest street demonstrations against Mugabe in several years. The pastor fled to South Africa in July and then to the United States in fear for his life after being publicly denounced by Mugabe, whose security forces crushed the protest movement. Harare was also detained last July for allegedly trying to overthrow the state, but a court dropped charges against him. Now, joining us on the phone line for a reaction is Zim PF spokesperson, Mr. Jelas Harare. Mr. Harare, very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on the program. So news just coming in that Pastor Harare has been arrested at the airport. Could you furnish us with details with regards to the charges that have been leveled against him?
Audrey, we are only getting to understand that he has been arrested, but we are not aware of the charges that being based on. And we are trying to understand why he has been arrested, and also even to understand why, when he left because he was not secure in the country, and why he didn't choose to come at this particular point in time. Those are things that we are still trying to learn. And I've been trying to get hold of his lawyer, but I couldn't get hold of.
So I understand Pastor Harare had made mention that he will be coming back to Zimbabwe. He showed a lot of anxiety, even in social media and all the interviews that he was giving different journalists. But still, he decided to come back to Zimbabwe, obviously having been arrested a number of times, apparently with the same charges. How do you see this panning out, given the political climate in Zimbabwe?
It's very difficult to anticipate because as it stands now, Audrey, if we knew the charges that are being laid against him, we could be on solid ground to understand why he has been detained. But as it stands now, what we know for sure is that he has been detained. But for what and why he was detained, we are still to ascertain that. And for us then to make postulations as to why he has been arrested and how this is going to pan out, I think it's pretty premature.
Mr. Harare, thank you so much for your time here on Africa Tonight. That's the Zim PF spokesperson. They're just talking to us all the way from Zimbabwe with regards to Zimbabwean activist Pastor Ivan Harare having been arrested at Harare airport. Joining us now on the phone line for more reactions is Mr. Themba Muliswa. He is the chairman for the Youth Advocacy for Reform and Democracy, Human Rights and Democracy, right? And is also an honourable member of Parliament in Zimbabwe. Mr. Muliswa, very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Your initial reaction when you heard that Pastor Harare had been arrested?
No, thank you very much. A very good evening to you. I think, listen, I've been arrested over 70 times over flimsy charges, and I think it's important to understand that the sort of country that we are in, the sort of regime which is there, and I think it was pretty obvious that the state had a case against him. From a constitutional point of view, he can only be held for not more than 48 hours. So by Friday, he'll be in court. So it's equally important that we also respect the Constitution. At the same time, his lawyers representing him. And if the state believes that they have a case, they have to prove the case. But of course, with what he had tried to do in terms of mobilizing people through protest, that certainly brought a bit of fear to the state. So it's just a way of trying to kind of show their powers and ensure that they're in control of things. But that, again, does border on human rights. And I think do you need to detain somebody who's come on his own accord? You don't necessarily need to do that. So there's an aspect of human rights which we must respect, and I think it's important that the state raises above that. They don't have to create unnecessary attention when the economy is so tough. I think we have more important things to deal with rather than having to detain somebody who's come back on his own, and I think the courts would then determine what will happen. Do they need to detain him? No, but if you are involved in Zimbabwean politics, this is how it goes. You've got to be hardened. Like I said, Trangira has been arrested before, Tendai Biti has been arrested before, and many other leaders. I love Muhammad Duke has been arrested before. So basically, welcome to the real political situation, Pastor Evan Mawaria. We are back. We are glad you are back home, and you are here to fight the battles at home. That's what we tend to respect. And I think it goes without saying, he has a following. He made an impact, but he needed to be on the ground. So I'm sure there will be a lot of people supporting him, praying for him, his church, and other fellow Christians. So I think it is a process of trying to get about this sort of democracy that we all are fighting for in Zimbabwe.
Right, Mr. Mliswa, obviously, like you mentioned, Pastor Evan Martyr had quite a huge following, particularly with the youth, and you know, his online presence was very strong. There's others who are speculating that perhaps he did this, you know, just to gain his momentum back, because a lot of Zimbabweans seem to have been felt betrayed when he went back to the United States, saying that he should come back to Zimbabwe and fight this war, you know, with the rest of Zimbabweans. Do you think this was done on purpose?
No, it's equally important. He had a huge following through the church. It was important that the Christian community was involved. You had people like Shingimyeza, who's a very strong person in the ministry, you know, working with the churches to ensure that democracy prevails about democracy. But there's got to be consistency as well. I think it's not good the church just having to rally behind their own because he's a pastor, he's a white-collar person. What about people who are politicians who don't belong to churches but fight for the same cause? So there's got to be consistency. But it's good to see the church coming out. They've got to carry on. And I think what is important at the end of the day is to understand that you've got to be able to deal with the solutions in Zimbabwe while you're on the ground in Zimbabwe. People were disappointed he had left after he had certainly taken them to a certain level, hoping that he is the man, because Zimbabweans are quite desperate for change. So whoever comes with an idea that will bring about change, they are likely to fall for it. But they were very disappointed. He then went to America. Others who were protesting with him were arrested. They were detained. People like Linda Msariri, who was a strong advocate, Person Zamara. These are some of the people who were working with him, but they stayed at home. They are here. They are alive. So at least he knows that, yes, while you're fighting the system, you'll be arrested, you'll go to Chikurubi, but you still come out at the end of the day. And I think that's part of the struggle that you have to go through in the change and the democracy that we need. He's back with us politicians. We're hoping that whatever efforts he's putting together, we can complement that. We can complement each other towards bringing the much needed change that we all want in Zimbabwe. So, like I say, it's critical that he's here. We'll be there to support him in the courts like we all do to ensure that justice does prevail at the end of the day. He has a very good lawyer, the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, has been very good in representing people. I equally have been represented by them as well. So when you've been through the mill, you're not as timid as others who don't be through it. But this is the politics of Zimbabwe. Like I said, welcome to the real politics of Zimbabwe.
Of course, Mr. Mliswa, good of you to join us on the show. Thank you so much for weighing in on this issue. More reactions are coming from Zimbabwe. Joining us on the phone line now is Mr. Dewa Mavinga. He's a senior researcher for Zimbabwe and Southern Africa with the Africa Division at the Human Rights Watch. Mr. Mavinga, thank you for joining us. Very good evening to you. We're just talking to different political parties in Zimbabwe, giving us their reactions with regards to Pastor Evan Martyr being detained as he tried to come back home to Zimbabwe. Others mentioning the issue of human rights being violated. How do you see this? How do you weigh in on this?
There is no justification for arresting Pastor Martyr, who has committed no crime. He has come back voluntarily to his home country. He has committed no crime, and when he left, he has been cleared by the courts of Zimbabwe that he had committed no crime. So these trumped up charges, politically motivated, of seeking to subvert a constitutionally established government, are baseless, charges that should be thrown away And Pastor Mawarire should be released immediately, unconditionally, and with no charges, because really he is just a man of the cloth who was peacefully calling for protests and asking the government to be accountable.
Now, Pastor Evan Mawarire, obviously, he's been traveling around the world ever since he started this protest in Zimbabwe with the following that he had. How do you see this? How do you think it will shine on the Zimbabwean government with regards to human rights? As you have mentioned that he had been cleared of all his charges, but obviously, the government thinks he has a case to answer. How do you see this panning out in the Human Rights Watch community?
Well, it's a red flag that conditions in Zimbabwe have not changed, and it's a red flag that the country has not moved forward or turned over a new page in terms of human rights respect. And it's unnecessary attention to the government of Zimbabwe, which should otherwise be promoting respect for human rights in terms of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which clearly says that all citizens have fundamental rights, including freedom of expression and the right to petition and to protest peacefully, which rights Pastor Mawarire was calling for. He had not called for violence, he had not committed a crime, and his rights in the Constitution as enshrined should be respected.
Mr. Mavinga, I certainly appreciate your time here in Africa Tonight and you weighing in on this issue. More reactions now coming in from Zimbabwe, different political parties. On the phone line now is Mr. Love Mochukucha from PDP. So thank you so much for joining us on the phone line. So we have been talking to different political parties in Zimbabwe. Mr. Muliso, I'm sure you're aware of him, saying that whatever efforts Pastor Evan Mawarire, is trying to push with regards to whatever activism that is trying to go within Zimbabwe, they will be complementing his efforts. With the PDP, where do you stand when it comes to Pastor Mawarire? Mr. Chukucha, I do hope that you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. I'll just repeat my question to you, sir, just so you catch up with what's been happening. I've been talking to the different political parties from Zimbabwe, and Mr. Muliso says they will be complementing Pastor Evan Mawarire's efforts with whatever activism that he will be championing in Zimbabwe. You do know that he has come back. He has been arrested, charges to do with subverting the constitution of the government. What is your stance when it comes to Pastor Mawarire?
Really condemn the arrest of Pastor Mawarire as soon as he arrived at the Zimbabwe International Airport. This is clearly a violation of human rights. The government is trying to show to the people that whoever is going to try to speak for change, they will clearly shut them down. But this is showing to the nation of Zimbabwe that ZANU-PF has reduced Zimbabwe to a ZANU-PF state, that whoever goes against the wills or to fight against ZANU-PF, they will clearly show them that they really control the people of Zimbabwe. So it's clearly showing to the people of Zimbabwe that we don't have democracy. And what does it show to us? How do we wake up as Zimbabwean people to say our government that is we trusted to lead us, that do not want people to freely demonstrate and freely speaking about the problems that are affecting them in Zimbabwe? We have a government that has got a system of torture, system of intimidation. So this is the time that people of Zimbabwe should stand up and come together and fight for their country, because this is showing that if we don't come together, we are going to fail. And this government is clearly going to clamp down on every effort that every Zimbabwe is going to put to come together to change the regime of ZANU-PF. But I want to appeal to the Zimbabwean people that they should not fear or be intimidated by the action that this government is taking. We are soldiering on. We are in solidarity with people that are fighting for the rights of the Zimbabweans. We will fight until win this war.
Mr. Chukwucha, as we all know that Pastor Evan Marire, even before he left, he led quite a number of what was viewed as successful protests in Zimbabwe. Do you think his coming back to the country and his subsequent arrest will spark protests again?
I think the government of Zimbabwe is, when Pastor Marire clearly, when he posted on social media that he is coming back to Zimbabwe, they fear that the following that he had previously when he launched the hashtag this flag, it actually intimidated them, and they are speculating that since he's back in the country, there is going to be a large protest. And since we have 21 days of activism, so the government is trying to send a message to people that do not try to organize any sort of protest against the government. But it is people's rights. How can we have a government that really don't want people to put their grievances before them, and they have no solution to the people, and people are crying to say we need a solution, we need reassurance. And people, when they protest, they are not rising against the government. They are actually trying to indicate that misrule, mismanagement of the public funds should be addressed. But the government is turning everything to avoid any uprising or a change of regime. But clearly, this is going to make it worse.
Right.
And it's going to increase anger into every Zimbabwean, because people are watching.
Right.